Hi everyone and welcome back to the Jaxom Talks channel. For our subject today, we are looking into the history of, arguably, one of the most important and certainly the most overlooked class of warships in the Second World War, the Flower-class corvette. These were the little ships built in a hurry, based on an existing whaling vessel design and tossed into the brutal meat grinder of the Battle of the Atlantic. They were cramped, wet and often seasick-inducing, but they saved Britain. We're not just going to talk about the class generally though. We're focusing on one specific ship, a true pioneer and testbed for naval innovation. HMS Verbena, pennant number K85. I was made aware of this little ship from the tales my grandfather told me of his time aboard this ship during the Second World War. If the Flower class was the workhorse of the Atlantic, Verbena was a key mid-service prototype. She tested the radical changes in design, command structure, and technology that ultimately helped turn the tide against the U-boats. She had a service life that spanned the construction chaos of 1940, the desperate combat of the Atlantic, and the long punishing grind of the Indian Ocean. Truly a global career that few other ships could match. Let's start at the beginning. Why did the Royal Navy need a ship that was essentially a weaponized whale catcher? The Flower class was born of desperation. When World War II erupted in 1939, the Royal Navy had plenty of destroyers, but they were few, expensive, and needed for the fleet. They desperately needed thousands of cheap, quickly built escorts to protect the vital supply convoys from Halifax and New York. The solution in the end came from Smith's Dock Company. Take the design of the available commercial whaler model, the Southern Pride, and stretch it out. The result was a 205-foot vessel, displacing 925 tons, powered by a triple expansion engine capable of about 16 knots. Simple, effective, and crucially, it could be built by small civilian yards, like the one where Verbena was laid down on June 29, 1940. Incidentally, Verbena was originally ordered by the French government, but after the fall of France, she was transferred to the Royal Navy. The Verbena's armament consisted of the following: a single 4-inch gun, 2 twin Vickers machine guns, 2 twin Lewis machine guns, and 2 depth charge throwers with 40 charges. Now this is where Verbena comes into her own and becomes historically significant to the Flower class. The first batch of Flower corvettes had a critical flaw: the original short forecastle design. In the heavy mountainous seas of the North Atlantic, these ships were what was referred to as terribly wet. This means that because of the short bow they plunged through waves rather than riding over them, making life miserable and reducing their fighting efficiency. Verbena was the ship chosen to fix this. She holds the distinction of being the first Flower-class corvette that was completed with an extended forecastle. This modification extended the bow section much further aft, dramatically improving her stability and making her far more seaworthy. Her first commanding officer, a man named Dennis Rayner, even famously viewed the modified vessel as quite perfect. The success of this design modification on Verbena led the Admiralty to make the long forecastle the standard for all subsequent Flower-class construction. This fundamentally changed the Flower class's operational effectiveness. So Verbena wasn't just another ship. She was the prototype that ensured hundreds of subsequent corvettes could survive the Atlantic. Verbena was commissioned on December 19, 1940 and immediately certified for ocean escort duty. But she broke another boundary before she even steamed out of port. Verbena was the first Flower-class corvette to be commanded by an officer of the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, Lieutenant Commander Dennis Rayner. The reserve officers, often known as Wavy Navy, due to the wave on their rank insignia, were civilians who volunteered for service. They were rapidly trained and put into command of ships during one of the most critical naval operations of the war. Rayner, who would later write a celebrated memoir called Escort, commanded Verbena from late 1940 until September 1942. His success showed the Admiralty that these citizen sailors could successfully lead critical, complex operations. Verbena was assigned to convoy defense in the western approaches, eventually joining the Mid-Ocean Escort Force, part of Escort Group B-12. Her service was a relentless cycle of shepherding terrified merchant ships across the world's most dangerous stretch of water. The most famous action she took part in during this period was the escort of convoy HX-1-6 in May 1941. This convoy came under heavy, sustained attack from a wolf pack of 11 U-boats, resulting in the loss of 9 merchantmen. During the desperate defense, Verbena was required to engage several times. Alongside a destroyer, she delivered a depth charge attack against U-74. While Verbena is not officially credited with a confirmed sinking, the U-boat was heavily damaged and forced to abort her mission and return to France. This single action shows the tenacity of these crews, battling the U-boat packs in the era when the escorts were still seriously outgunned and outmaneuvered. But the most game-changing event for Verbena and the whole escort fleet came during a refit in late 1941. Beginning September 4 at Grangemouth, Verbena received a revolutionary upgrade, the Type 271 Surface Warning Radar. This was the new, highly secret centimetric radar system. Crucially, the set fitted to Verbena was sourced directly from the battlecruiser HMS Renown, underscoring the absolute priority the Admiralty placed on equipping these small escorts with the latest technology. This radar gave corvettes a new ability to detect surfaced U-boats at night or in bad weather, taking away the submarine's tactical advantage and signaling a massive shift in the Battle of the Atlantic. Equipped with her new long forecastle and cutting-edge radar, Verbena's service broadened far beyond the Atlantic. Following her refit, she was nominated for foreign service, sailing first for escort duties based out of Freetown and then south toward Cape Town, escorting military convoys like WS-12Z around Africa. By late 1941, she was ordered to join the Eastern Fleet at Colombo, transferring from the U-boat war to the growing threat posed by Imperial Japan in the Far East. This global transit, however, revealed the inherent weakness of the Flower-class design, the strain on its machinery. On April 25, 1942, while based at Colombo, Verbena was declared non-operational. She had suffered a major boiler defect. For a ship whose core purpose was constant motion, this was catastrophic. Verbena was stuck. She required intensive repairs, which in the resource-strained Eastern Theater took nearly 9.5 months. She was not declared fit for further service until February 6, 1943. This massive downtime at a critical moment just after the Japanese had swept through the Indian Ocean highlights the intense logistical challenges of maintaining mass-produced ships in distant theaters. Once repaired, Verbena was immediately back in service. She was transferred to the Indian Ocean Escort Force, spending the rest of her operational career securing the long lines of communication across the Arabian Sea and East African coast. She escorted convoys like BM-041, MB-025, and CX-002, operating out of Colombo, Kilindini, and Durban. In 1944, she was involved in escorting high-value assets, including the floating dock AFD-39, demonstrating her continued utility as a reliable logistical protector. Her service here was quieter than the U-boat battles, but no less essential to maintaining the Allied foothold in the East. As the war wound down in the Pacific, the massive escort fleet was quickly decommissioned. Verbena's active service concluded in September 1945, when she arrived at Milford Haven. From that point, she was placed onto the reserve list. Like many of her sisters, she was eventually deemed surplus. In 1948, she was placed on the disposal list and sold to a Swedish shipping firm, Ebit or Holmes, with the intention of being converted into a merchant vessel. However, the conversion plans were abandoned. After spending several years inactive in a Swedish port, Verbena was finally sold for scrap. She arrived at Blyth, UK, on October 1, 1951, where she was broken up. The fate of Verbena was an unsung end to an indispensable ship, but her story is far more than her size or her ultimate fate. Verbena was an early essential prototype that addressed the crucial shortcomings of the original Flower-class design. She pioneered the extended forecastle, saving many ships from being unseaworthy in the Atlantic. She was commanded by Dennis Rayner, the celebrated raver officer whose experience defined the spirit of the corvette crews. She was also one of the first ships to receive the Type 271 radar, which fundamentally shifted the technological advantage away from the U-boats and toward the escorts. In a war defined by the clash of titans, the battleships and aircraft carriers, it was these small, rapidly built ships, often pushed beyond their design limits, that kept the vital arteries of global supply open. HMS Verbena K-85 was not the most famous, but she was arguably one of the most transformative to its class. That's it for today's talk. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode, and let me know in the comments which unsung hero ship we should cover next. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.